Welcome back. It's a territorial conflict between Argentina and the United Kingdom that's existed for decades. Argentines call the islands Las Malvinas, and in the UK, they're considered the Falkland Islands. In 1982, a war erupted over the sensitive issue, which left 700 Argentines and 250 British soldiers dead. Last year, a referendum was held over the island's status. 99% of the island voters chose to keep things as they are, and for Malvinas to remain a self-governing nation overseen by Britain. Argentina, however, did not recognize the referendum. It created a new position for an official to claim sovereignty over the region and communicate on its behalf. Daniel Filmus is the new Secretary of Malvinas, and he recently gave our correspondent Joel Richards one of the first interviews since his appointment. We bring it to you now from Buenos Aires.
Under Néstor Kirchner, he was Education Secretary. With Cristina Fernández de Kirchner, he was National Senator and ran for Buenos Aires Mayor in 2011. Daniel Filmus has been involved in the Peronist Party since his days as a university student. With a more academic profile than many politicians, Filmus took over his new role as the Malvinas Secretary in January. His new office is just meters away from the memorial to the soldiers who lost their lives in the 1982 conflict. And when we met, he began explaining Argentina's position, saying that the British claim to listen to the islanders' wishes hides the real motives behind holding on to the Falkland Islands.
Contrary to what the British suggest regarding self-determination, the British interest is military, economic, and geopolitical. It is military because it is the only base in the South Atlantic. It is a zone of denuclearization. This, despite there being witnesses who have seen submarines with nuclear arms in the zone. That is a concern because it breaks international agreements. There is a British concern to have the Malvinas for its reach to the Antarctic. And thirdly, as you mentioned, there is an economic issue. There is not just fishing, but there is also future exploitation of oil.
The question of oil has frayed tensions between Argentina and the United Kingdom. Argentina has taken steps to create new legislation that would prosecute companies who take oil from near the islands. And to what extent has the discovery of oil reserves in and around the islands made this a slightly more sensitive issue in Argentina?
Argentina has laws that those who explore for oil without authorization will be taken to court, and that is an advance in Argentine justice. China was one country that decided to stop fishing in the Malvinas area, not just out of solidarity, but also in order to be able to fish in Argentine waters.
Argentina has been looking to pressure those companies who seek to explore for oil, and there was new legislation passed in December. There's new legislation which speaks of up to 15 years imprisonment and heavy fines. What's the reaction of business companies been to that new legislation?
None of the big businesses in oil are investing there. We are seeing that many, British Petroleum for example, is working with partners to invest in Argentina and not there. What we have seen very recently is that there has been a delay in investment from companies that are working in Malvinas.
But while Argentina aims to recover the Falkland Islands, since the 1982 conflict, there have been no discussions between the two countries. There were advanced talks with General Perón in the 1970s, and that discussed shared sovereignty. So what exactly would Argentina's proposal be?
Entre el año 1966 y el año 1982. Between 1966 and 1982 until the war, the two countries had proposals and there were drafts that had begun to move forward. There were talks of both flags being raised, shared sovereignty, something similar to Hong Kong with leaseback, handing over the sovereignty but renting the islands for a time. There were proposals for over 20 years that weren't carried through. There were many reasons for that. One was the death of Perón when talks were very advanced in 1974, But even later with the dictatorship, there were proposals that failed for one reason or another. Since 1983, there is no possibility whatsoever that Argentina takes any other route on this issue that isn't diplomatic. That's why we are surprised that the UK, until 1982, was negotiating with the military. As we know, the military tortured, killed, and kidnapped people, but the UK had dialogue with that dictatorship. Then they refused to start any dialogue with 30 years of democratic governments. All political parties support this. It is not one government. It is not Cristina Fernández de Kirchner's government. It is not just government from the last 10 years, but it is Argentina's democratic government.
Se niega a tener un diálogo con 30 años de democracia argentina, donde todas las fuerzas políticas.
Son to a Romanian father and a Polish mother, Daniel Filmus says that Argentina is an inclusive country with a constitution that respects differences. The islanders have lobbied both at the UN and also with other Latin American countries for trade. So what is exactly the relationship between Argentina and the islanders?
Nosotros queremos tener la mejor relación.
We want the best relationship. When you look at what happened between 1975 and 1983, Argentina had installed an airport, gas was from Argentina, oil from Argentina, the post office went via Argentina, and there were Argentine teachers teaching Spanish. There were a number of scholarships for islanders to study in Argentina, and for serious health problems they would come to Argentina. The Argentine Constitution says that while the Malvinas belong to Argentina, we have to respect the life of the islanders. UN resolutions say we have to respect the islanders' interests, and what it doesn't say, very importantly, is that we have to respect the wishes of the islanders. The Argentine Constitution fosters diversity. What they cannot do, though, like the Welsh who are in Argentina or the British community that is also here, is say who the land belongs to.
And finally, with the creation of this secretary, in the most optimistic of outlooks, what do you envisage and what time frame do you believe that there could be negotiations with the United Kingdom?
We are sure this will happen. There are only 16 cases in the world. This is one of the few cases, like Gibraltar with Spain, that is an appropriation of territory by another country. The time frame doesn't matter. We will have the patience to continue to work. This new position of secretary will give us new strength to work towards a resolution with the UK, so the two countries can reach an agreement through the only mechanism we